I'm very happy to be able to introduce today's speaker. It's Hartmut Esslinger. I had this whole conversation whether the G was a hard G or a soft G, and it's Esslinger with a hard G, I think. Now, Hartmut is both an entrepreneur as well as a visionary designer. His influence, his design influence, is frankly persuasive in life as we know it, in life and in culture and all kinds of things that we experience. Among these things, it's a long list, but we picked out a few things as representative of some of the things that he's influenced, frankly, in your and my life. It includes the design of the Lufthansa planes. It includes the Microsoft programming interface, or not the programming interface, but your interface as you experience Microsoft programs. And it also includes, and I guess it goes much farther back than 1982, but there's at least a key point in 1982 where he did the original 1982 design of the first Snow White Apple II computer. And the story that goes with that is that prior to this, and maybe even for some manufacturers after this, computers were bulky and heavy, and this white and very light design basically started a complete new trend in the way that we perceive and use computers, and basically started Apple off on obviously a very good history of design. After that design, after the Apple II design, Hartmut renamed his design firm to be called Frog Design. And today, Frog Design continues, and in fact, it employs 350 people worldwide. So with all of this, it's my great pleasure to be able to introduce Hartmut Esslinger.
Thank you. Okay, welcome. The structure should be the following, that I explain you a little bit with some pictures, what is important, I think, for our profession in the future especially, and also that we have some time for discussion. First the question, who of you are designers? Who of you designers first? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many are engineers? Okay. And how many are business people? Cool. So I started my life as an artist, and I was forced by my parents to be an engineer because fashion was too insecure for them. Then my professor told me, Esslinger, you have no talent. Do something else. And I said, what? He said, hey, give me a hint. He said, your drawings are too nice. And then I started design. And my wife then forced me to become also interested in business, which means our role is that I make sure the money comes in and she makes sure the money doesn't get out. Somewhat like that. I still have a credit card. Also to explain Frog, it's a bit of a joke. Where I grew up in Germany, originally there were a lot of frogs, but that's not the point. It's an acronym for Federal Republic of Germany, which I think was a nice departure from the Nazi Germany. And then I just found it makes sense, it doesn't make sense. And people wrote me letters back then, was an email yet, stupid idea. And after I got 90% rejection, I knew it as a good idea. And that's something about creativity which I want to push with you today. Also, about my status, I'm a German-born American, so I use the rights of the First Amendment, and we'll find some examples. I hope you're not offended. So design for me has to do with a lot of colors. Actually, can we do, that's fine. Visibility good? Okay. So what is design? And the big misunderstanding, I think historically design has adopted itself too much to the aesthetic side. In reality, I think what we do, if we connect things like from what is in science and technology, finance and business, nature and ecology, and we connect this up to us people. And aesthetics is only one skill required. Another skill is coordination. Another skill is bringing people together and things like that. So don't get too much carried away when you think design, that's an aesthetic profession. It's much more coordination. Naturally, design, if it humanizes, aesthetics is nice. I mean, nobody wants to date an ugly person. Nobody wants to get an ugly baby. But when we get our babies, other people may find our baby not so beautiful, but I find my children beautiful. So we also self-replicate ourselves, and that's a big point. Design has a lot to do with what is familiar, what is unfamiliar. And depending on our switch of attraction and focus, sometimes we like the familiar, sometimes we like the unfamiliar. So when you go to new technology, it should be more familiar. If you do something which is the 10th computer, that probably should not look so familiar. So it's kind of a bizarre situation. You go really new, looks familiar, you do the same thing for the 20th time, it should not look familiar again. Then, what's also sometimes forgotten, design is about symbolism. For example, this is a Sony design language, actually before Apple. I worked with Sony since '74 as a young kid, got to Japan and was happy to do something else, really provocative. But they told me, you will listen for 1 year and say nothing, but keep your eyes and ears open. So there are the processes, and then ultimately we discovered that the design of Sony back then was not defined by aesthetics, but by emotion. And actually the background of it was all technology. Make it solid, make it good quality. And also what Morita wanted to do, it should be very hard to copy. So we had a nearly unlimited tooling budget. So when anybody tells you we have no money for tooling, tell them, bullshit. You have to spend a lot of money on tooling to save cost, make it better, and also make it unique. Then also what design has to do when we have to work with markets, it's very clear. First people want something and then they want more and more for less. So we have to do better with less. If you take positionings, what happens in the retail, like Target stores, or you look out, they have to spread out the spectrum of offerings, but do it with much less. Naturally, somebody has to give. If you buy a coffee maker from Michael Greaves, it won't work because it's too cheap. So then I think logical for Target would be also to invent something. But the trend overall, as you see here, is that where the old positioning was I get a product and I like it and I do it, or this and that. Now you have to spread it out. You have to meet many, many different profiles, and you have much less money and much less time for it. Finally, customer relationship. Very abused word, because everybody uses it as excuse, like right-wing religion and things like that. So what is customer relationship? Ultimately, it's really what is important for yourself when you are a customer. Go home, talk to your family, to your mother's, father's, daughter, wife, friend, and so on. What do they think? Because in companies, people have the tendency to lie to each other. And as Hemingway said, everybody can sell everything to oneself. There are 4 elements. That's with the product and brand, where you say, okay, I know that, this is also engineering, but it has to be serviced, has to be recycled, has to be communicated, it has to be transported. So these 4 elements alone are a very complex system, and I think the challenge, both as a business person, engineer, or designer, whatever, in the company, you have to understand it's a whole thing. Later more. And also interesting, I just had a discussion with my second son, who is a little bit more in trying to, he wants to be a scientist, very rational. And then we still have a little place in Spain, but have not built anything. We never get to Spain, and we paid so and so much money for it. Then I said a neighbor offered $5,000 to buy it, and then Max said, but what is it worth? And then I said, it's $5,000 right now, because that's the only thing we have as an offer. So very often it's forgotten. Also what Karl Marx explained, it may be one side, what does it cost to do something, but the other side is what is it worth to somebody else. And that this added value is really a misunderstood concept to this very day. So money buys it, but emotion sells. As an example, a new kind of light bulb, we experiment a little bit of rocks. Sometimes you can spend our own money on stuff that would be an LED light bulb, but in old design, just as a catch thing. And now we come to the point, I mean, in university, and also have my 74 students in Vienna, it's kind of idealistic. You don't have really to make money. A reject you get maybe not so dramatic, but if you get out to the world, it's very hard for creative people to have a good life. So in terms of smart business, as it's currently done, more financially driven, I think you can read it. I don't want to read this PowerPoint, but the ultimate analysis is about 90% of all companies are addicted to very wasteful mediocrity. And that is something you have to change. Don't accept it. Never accept it. Rather quit. And I'll give you one example. There's this gentleman by the name of Nadelli. He came from GE to Home Depot, raised the revenue 76% in 6 years, not bad. Then he screwed up, got 210 million to take home. The other employees who got laid off got nothing. Now Chrysler, the owner of Chrysler, a private equity group, hired him to run Chrysler. I mean, they already make bad cars, and they have shitty numbers. So what is coming now? And now he hires some sales guys from Toyota, but he should go to the factory of Toyota City and maybe spend a year and learn what it takes, or the Cerberus guys. So you see, this whole idea of making lots of money with nothing is an absolutely absurd concept. And I think it's the biggest problem we have in American business right now, aside of lack of ethics. There's really kind of a nearly fascist suppression of new thinking. Or even a good executive moves to another company, gets a corporate jet, and turns into a right-wing whatever. So business people are from Mars. A bit of a copy of this famous book, which my wife gave me. And we have a happy marriage. It's 25 years. But creatives are from Venus. And creatives doesn't mean designers. Creatives means any person who has the desire and the talent and the wish and the ability and the courage to do it is from Venus, which is about emotion and love. Now, what is courage? Left brain, right brain? I mean, it's not, some people pretend there are two kinds of people in the world. Everybody is one person. There may be different weights, but typically American, we try to switch it a bit and say this about this. Is it about money? I think it's about cultural context. And when you look at the true achievements, including Apple, Steve Jobs, a couple other guys, it's really about, it's an adventure. One example just came to my mind about Jack Welch when he still ran GE. They bought a company in Annapolis that made electrical engines made from sand casting. And then he came through with his entourage, and you can get a perfect seat here. There's enough open. Will you come in? I'm not offended. Get a seat. But this is not ergonomic what you do down there.
You can also come around and come through this door.
Yeah, please. So Jack came in and said, the dust must go, because the sand is blasting, it was dust all over the place. So we had a competitive pitch, and then we proposed different materials like profiles, no casting, lots of pre-made stuff, metal stamping, but nothing with dust. And actually, as we have the extrusion profiles, I think the tool was about $25 million 25 years back. And then we showed this to the CEO of the group, and he was really shocked. So many millions, and it looks nice, we can do nice stuff. And then came Jack Welch. So this is kind of expletive, expensive. What do you guys do? I said, the dust is gone. That's it. Okay, I don't care. Wonderful. So we got the job, and the whole thing changed. Is it not loud enough? So business is not a kissing game, especially between us and them. Then this was my first design, just as a little bit of an emotional statement. It was not about beauty, it was about the new technology. Back then, polystyrene foam. No, that's too much. Maybe I still, when I played in the rock band, still the same problems. But anyway, the point was not that it looked different, yes, but the point was it also was less expensive. It was different, and it was easier to use. And actually, it was not just another wooden box with metal trimming. I thought a little bit may help you, especially engineering the business side. What is the biggest problem we encounter? Because it cannot be that creatives and non-creatives, so to speak, always have this kind of fight. And when the arts and crafts movement started, John Ruskin looked at this a poem by Charles Kingsley, where a farmer went out to the ocean, the North Sea, and tried to recover a cow, and the wave killed her. She drowned. And then he describes the foam of the waves as a cruel, crawling foam. So how can a foam of an ocean be cruel? And then he had this whole philosophy, that every shape we do and everything we do has a meaning. and it produces the meaning in us. It's not what it is, it's what we perceive. And we call it the pathetic fallacy, which is a confusion between the power we feel inside and the indifferent way of the world, how the world actually works. So many engineers sitting here, many business guys have great ideas, and the bosses just walk by and don't see it. So for us it means the confusion between what we creatives would like to do and what our clients and society really needs from us. And also for what they pay us for or what they need for survival. So new and old economies, naturally start with the financial economy. The easiest way would be to print the money, but obviously somebody had the idea not to make it legal anymore. So people have to work for it, but some business, like when you look today, it's worse than printing money because it's burning money. Naturally, the emerging economy, in this case Shanghai, the outsourcing economy, which if it's not done right, is really a strategy against innovation. You should understand that. I come later in detail to that. The old service economy, I think still the best examples in Japan. The new service economy would be great if the coverage would be better. I mean, in my place, I cannot make cell phone calls half of the time because AT&T is lowering the bar to 2. And it's true, and I actually write a book about it. I will mention the book. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I go to China in the middle of nowhere, South Africa, where you go, Ukraine, you have coverage, but not in Silicon Valley. That's the war economy 1.0, and it turned out to be very different. 2.0, hope we got out. That actually also goes to the entertainment economy because many people now misunderstand virtual reality versus real reality. And Sharon Lanier is a good friend of mine, so we know what we talk about. There's a creative economy where everything becomes more and more important on that we do not use materials. And actually ultimately the greener economy. I'll come back to that later. So I think also it may help you, and I must say it's a bit patched together here. Normally it would be 5 lectures, so we try to push it into 1. In the end, I give you my email address. You can ask questions, and certainly, so don't be too much shocked here. So one thing is actually you have to apply ideas and business strategies and whatever you do to reality. And basically you have 3 levels. One is a vision level. And so if you call me a visionary, that means the guy knows nothing about reality. And it's true. And in our house is something breaking, and my second son is not home. My wife said something is broken, and then I go to the hardware store, and then she prays that she can fix it before I come back, because I have no practical talent. So I'm certainly a visionary, proven. Then there are the people who convert between vision and doability, also important in the middle section. And finally, the guys who do it. And I think in terms of our personal interest, there's certainly, also in Frog, we have these 3 different kind of people. Some think wild, and then at a certain point you have to rip them off and say, forget what you thought. Also take your idea and give it to somebody else. Because otherwise, those visionaries destroy their own ideas, and I'm also one of them. And also, you should not let the implementers run the show, which happens in many companies too. So it's kind of a balance. Converting vision to market, and also converting competence to vision. There's also a couple of marketing tools, those research tools, for example, the Warburg model. See how long is the technology in the market, and what is the price point, and you see there's a new, he calls it rookies, new stuff coming up. The chart is already 2 years old, so it's pretty Stone Age. Then rising stars are DVRs, already gone, we know. And then finally, the veterans are color TVs, they're dead by now. Desktop computers is also dead, so I think you have to update this slide. Apologies. But you know, the trick is the products cycle through, and the more they cycle through, the less money they make, and the more they are sitting in the shelf, and nobody uses them. Then also is especially interesting what is right and what is wrong. Funny enough, everything is right when it's only done right. So you can do outsourcing and home sourcing, make it local, make it other places. You can try to be only the best, and you can try to be the most effective. So how does it go? You must make a decision, but you cannot try everything. So wherever you go, you have to go to a company or do your own business and make a decision. You want to be the best, you want to be the most effective and the cheapest, which is kind of a material battle, but still can be done. Or you want to do something local, with a lot of control, or you go for the big numbers in outsourcing. So in outsourcing, the best is Apple and the most effective is Dell. And Porsche, a bit up there, Porsche is also, a lot of parts are made not by Porsche itself. And Toyota is the most effective, also best. Lego Toys, Harley Davidson, very home sourcing. The IKEA produces everything more where they sell it. And Trajima is a European, like Heinz here, but compared to Heinz, they make a lot of money. And to also very local fashion. Now, there's an interesting comparison. What is better to do it? If you compare Apple with Dell, okay, that's old data, but the data didn't change much in the meantime, because the reports always are a bit late. So in the fourth quarter of 2006, if you take that back, Apple had 5.7 billion revenues and a profit of 565, and Dell had 15 billion and a profit of 1.2. So Apple achieves half of Dell's profits with only a third of Dell's revenues. So less risk, less material, less effort. That's a huge difference. So when you say I want the best, or if you take Porsche makes, for example, Mercedes-Benz or BMW and Toyota Lexus make about $200 to $250 profit per car. Porsche makes $2,800 profit per car. So Mercedes and BMW and Audi and all the other guys have to sell 10 cars to make the same absolute profit as Porsche. Now what is more fun? Selling 10 or 1? Working your butts off or working your brains off? And I think that's a strategic decision. You also should look when you go out in the world, what is it worth to fight for? That's actually what you mentioned about Apple. The point not only was a new production method, but also reducing the price. There also was a Macintosh involved later. Before we worked with Apple, it was about $120 to $150 to produce a computer, plastic only. And when we had done this, it was under $10. So per computer, they did not save $110, that was not the point. But they could sell 1 million computers instead of 10,000. Was a little bit, it's not that it's always one thing or nothing. Whatever you do in business, design, engineering, it's an adaptive approach. We call it evolve, expand it, and envision. It's a bit like you sneak in the door, and it's a bit of a sales job. If you tell me, I'll change a company, everything, no. But if you do it once, a little bit, next time a little bit more, then you get the real shot. That's normally the way you do it. So don't be too, use your smarts. Especially sometimes you have to tell somebody you will die in 10 minutes. It's better we start your treatment now. And some people don't believe it, because if you find out what the real need, what the real needs are, they may be more open. Then a very important point is a lot of creative people complain, or they come to us and when we discuss it, yeah, we are a good company, but we have some morons who run the company, which is true. But then you have to change it. I mean, the pretty popular or prominent business consultant, Gary Hamel, once said it like this. He was at a company consulting them and said, finally I got some syringes from Stanford, carried them over, was a Silicon Valley company, put about a couple of rocks on the table, everybody got a pebble, everybody got a syringe, and said, now I want you to draw blood from these rocks. Because that's your business model, so do it. Who succeeds in drawing blood from these rocks really knows what he does. There's nothing else left here. And then actually they changed a bit, but not too much, and they didn't survive. But he said there was no other way to tell the guys they were on the lost cause. So at one point you have to change the business model. If you take Dell, for example, Dell has a business model on customer relationship and customization of something which is proven. But with the desktop things disappearing, now we have laptops where everything is in it, there's not much to customize. So all their logistics, their software, their warehouses are for nothing. They can just put an order to MyTech and get it. So that's why a lot of the competitiveness of Dell has evaporated. And also the innovation process, that's the typical Roman Empire structure, board of directors, CEO, individual fiefdoms, and you think it's kind of fine to go to R&D, become an engineer, but in reality your R&D guy has nothing to say, which means maybe the PLM guy controls everything. And it's very important when you go to find out what is a real empire. Because in human relations and the power balance in a company is never what the org chart is saying. You have to find out, ask friends, read books about it, articles, and you find out who is a big shot. Or who is the guy, the person who takes risks? Who is the next CEO? And with those people you connect, otherwise your career will end in the sun very quick. That's what we do at Frog also, kind of all this process stuff, because we also move a lot of things. That is, it's fuzzy on purpose, but the big thing I found out, and that's why we do these things, marketing wants a cool product, finance doesn't want to spend any money, engineering wants to over-feature it, the CEO wants to get to the Wall Street Journal first page in a good way, and they never talk to each other. So they create one bullshit bomb after the other. And I try, and that's a real hard battle, and I get fired 3 or 5 times for it. I say, we don't want to work with you, you're too complicated. You ask things you should not ask. And I said, why don't you know your budget? Yeah, let's assume we have the budget. I get the finance guy in the room. What do you think? He wants to spend $7 million on this. What? We have no money. And that's actually what CFOs learn at the first lesson in business school. I have no money. The check is in the mail, I have no money. And you should actually just fire them for that. They should spend their money wisely. But anyway, that gives an idea. It's not that simple as it may look here. You have to learn the craft, how to do it. But also process is king, very often misunderstood, especially in the digital age of alias. And so a nice picture and beautiful. And that's not the problem. The problem is, how do you convert a certain challenge, a business challenge, into a result? And I always recommend to think deep and long and design very late and quick. Because design is more visceral, but with no information in your belly produces something else. So you have to load it up with knowledge, with information, and then you can go ahead. So, for example, also the whole misunderstanding about innovation is, okay, we have ideas, and we have this and that, and a couple of nice books, and we give a card play, we put funny hats on, we are really innovative. The point is you have to source new ideas and also look for the opportunities. You have to think about, envision how they would change the world. Maybe it's something really bad. People kill each other with it. Or it's polluting. Offering the new idea and getting support, because it's stupid to make a model and say, oh, here, boss, here is what I like to do. Ask them what they like to do and kind of coordinate, create kind of a following. But also set up the structure of the project management. Project management, very bad. Our Frog people hate it, but without project management, we would be bankrupt or non-profitable since quite some time. At one point, you have to be accountable. Then also adapting the new idea to the reality, prove the benefits. For example, is there a market for it, or does it save energy? Does it protect the environment? Does it increase people's fun of life, things like that? And then also, very important, you cannot just sell. For example, if you take HP, a good client of us, but sometimes they sell a product like this, have a new idea and sell it into the same channel. It's like selling an airplane into a car dealership. It actually comes pretty close today, but there's still a little bit of difference of size. But it gives an idea. There's a lot of innovative stuff, and they just market it like Frito-Lay's chips or McDonald's burgers. It's really a joke. So think about the business model and make sure how to convert the idea to a real new appealing way. And also get the support structure and management, and then implement. Implementation means it's the end of idea changing, it's not implementing, and you may have to remove some of your idea people off the team and get the implementation people in. And also provide the leadership to take it to market. That's, for example, what Steve Jobs provides. At one point, he's not a creative person per se that he could design it, but he sees when it's good, then he gets behind it, puts the people behind it, and then push it to the market in a big way. And they do not go to Asia and look for the cheapest stuff like Microsoft did with Zune. And they designed the iPod and integrated, despite the fact that they infringed on a software patent. Could have had it for 5 million, then they paid 100 million. That was a stupid idea. Nothing goes ideal, but ultimately you have to bring it to the market with conviction. Now, outsourcing. It's a very difficult issue because an Austrian friend told me, why are the guys so stupid to give all the knowledge away and just become importers and things like that? But I think the key thing about outsourcing, by the way, Microsoft is also outsourced to India and Ukraine and other places, Petersburg. So a few design for many. And that is one of the challenges. If you have 1 million users, you cannot do everything you want. You must really look at a bit of mass taste and stuff like that. So if you look at the history a bit, that's from Adam Smith all the way to the Bauhaus, Henry Ford, and so on. Today we have a digitally operated and managed manufacturing system, and we have a power shift from tech companies to the ODMs. So if you look at Apple, deep down, Apple is a distribution company. They don't produce anything. HP is getting pretty close. Dell is an outsourcing shop from day one. They cannot even use a screwdriver there. But that's not the point. The point is, what is your business model? But at one point you must understand that the guys in China and Taiwan will tell you, dear Dell, it's over. Now we dictate price. You cannot come and say we only get $5 per so-and-so, because we can do it ourselves. So the power shift is in full swing. Motorola, all these guys suffer from it. And I think it's also something when you want to work as an engineer in high tech, you may decide better to go to a company who has control over their fate. And it's not just shipping your designs and your engineering stuff to somebody who does it for much less. Also, a big problem coming up with outsourcing is transportation costs, time delays, growing costs overall, terrorism, environmental sustainability. Ultimately, you can read it, but ultimately the point is also you have to either be cult, like Apple or Porsche, or you have to be Me Too and really good, like the others, and there are very few winners on both sides. Important issue to explain the challenge of outsourcing is of the product lifecycle management, phase one, conceptual design, detailed design. Then you go to procurement and production, and finally operation and support. In the case when I worked with Sony, this was integrated. When I worked with Apple, it already was two things. Today, it's very disintegrated. And the problem now is that the creative people deliver something, the next group in Taiwan or Singapore, Korea, takes it, and then finally they put it into production somewhere else. And then they wonder, in the end, why isn't it not exciting? Why isn't there any feedback? Why isn't there any customer love for it? Because this thing has it's got killed 3 times, and 3 times cooked. No food would survive that. So information flows in real time with the internet. And as soon as somebody has a plan, everybody knows it. I mean, you just read the evening news, or the old news next morning. When HP has a board meeting, some guys always have to talk to the press. Maybe they have a live transmit and a podcast to make sure that everybody gets his ego, whatever. But the point, the speed from idea to market is the most crucial component. So information flows, and then everything goes slow because it's a disconnected process. Because outsourcing requires more time and complicates collaboration. The risk is the biggest threat, and therefore management tends to retreat to safe decisions, what I call this addiction to mediocrity. And even most hardware and software companies today are more or less sellers of other people's code and knowledge. And it's not derogative that I mean Chinese and Indian knowledge, it's only ultimately the profits are in India and China and not in Silicon Valley or other places, or West Germany or France, who think they can continue in the old way of the old economy. The power goes to where the power is, and that the money will end up there. There's also a little bit of a big problem. I call it the red button syndrome. You know the famous case where an employee from Nike ordered 5 million shoes instead of 5,000, and even ordered the wrong model. He didn't order the model which dealer requested, retailers, but he ordered the model they rejected. So he ordered 5 million of a rejected shoe. And I call it, the tools get smarter and the users get dumber, or I call it at least more nicely more naive. And that's a hell of a problem. It also applies to design tools, by the way. As I mentioned, sometimes also our designers produce something as they put it into the 3D printer and find out what you really do here. Doesn't look right to me. So you get older, you see more. The young kids have already the video game syndrome. Should be fine. It's not. Sometimes you have to go to Newsweek to get your ideas out because your customers refuse it. I think it's also something, if you don't get heard inside, get heard outside. A very nice trick, by the way, I discovered by accident. One of my clients constantly said, my wife doesn't like it. And I knew where he lived, and we had a deadline, so I had a presentation there, and I called her, can I show you something, because this and that, and she was very irritated. Why don't you come by, who are you? So I went there, showed her the stuff. She said, "What is this? This is cool." I said, "I show it to you because your husband always says you don't like it." She said, "My husband shows me nothing." So we go to the presentation. The guy goes by, and then before he gets his press said, "By the way, I was a bit early this morning. I stopped by your house. You were already gone, but your wife was here, and she loves it." But a head like this. He never did it again. But, but I said, "Why don't we ask your wife a bit more often, because she obviously has taste." I mean, also, in a good way, she also chose him as a husband, so there was obviously something he could be proud of. Another thing, by the way, also is funny. We worked on this next time, I can show it, before they got acquired by Sprint. How should be the product of the future? And then Motorola is producing them, as you know. It was a big conference, and except for one lady, they were all men. And then it was a bit about this political correctness. Are there enough men? No, not really. What can we do? Are we inviting some associates to join us? I said, "Who of the men has a mother?" Only 2 went up and said, "Oh, that?" I mean, they had forgotten they were raised by a lady. You know, some men are so disconnected from this holistic view that they forget there's a family and whatever. So the idea would be that you squeeze something, the thing talks to your hand. We even made a little prototype. Then it's kind of jelly. Oh, it's lights. Will people pay for it? Then we showed it to people, did some focus testing, also some modifications of it. Everybody loved it. So you have this thing. Here people love it. Here people reject it. If you look at them visually, the guys who love it who have the money. The guy who don't love it have the fear. And I think that's a bit of our challenge, especially as young creatives, but as creatives in general, overcome the fear. Because what are they afraid of? They get fired anyway if they continue the way they do. Look at Sander and Motorola. What did they achieve with fear? Nothing. So move it. Then home sourcing, that's also something we do in Vienna a lot, because there are the violin makers and instrument makers. And I think home sourcing is the other alternative. Really bring things home, make it individual, use digital technology, but make it the way that people really feel it's just mine. Sorry for hitting the microphone. And actually, if you go home, many designed for a few. Actually, Linux and this whole open source movement in software is also pretty ugly. But I think over time, it will improve, and people will get to the point that they understand. Some people know how to do it. I mean, nobody cuts his hair himself, except for those who can. And we go to a hairdresser and get our hair fixed. And so they're specialists. I think this will be a revival of very high-skilled specialists. Because the natural ingredients, we can cook, we can bake. And also, if you look at the history, I mean, Adam Smith, after he wrote his Wealth of Nations, he also went to the theory of moral sentiments, that we need the warmth of cultural connectivity. And if you look today with personal fab and all this digital ability to do everything nearly perfect, very close to home, I think that's certainly a trend we should work on. A couple of examples is most products are not feasible to be produced in mass production all over the world. Most products are special products. So if you look at the absolute volume, the home source products will be much more in volume than the mass production. And I think also we should have a culture which is applicable in poorer countries, which doesn't have to be over-featured and undercooked. We have to go to different ways of doing technology. Here, an example, we took some modules of Flextronics, and we combined them in a new way and make kind of a jewelry, necklace, computer, camera, computer, communication device. And it works. So that's normally in a cell phone. Now it's just here. And there are many ways to do technology in a different way, instead of making a stupid box. By the way, we also have a Native American in our team, and he had an old story that the people coming from Europe are the box people, which he took back. He refuses to design boxes. And he said, okay, the pilgrims came over in boxes on the water, and they were building houses in boxes, and they put stuff into the boxes. Finally, they died, and they put them in boxes and buried them. And whatever Westerners touch, the Europeans, they make boxes, even if it doesn't have to be. And it's true. It's idiotic. It's absolutely scandalous, frivolous. So if you look at the box, out of the box thinking, it's actually a kind of a wish, but nobody really goes with it. So at HP, for example, I proposed to put the computers in a bag and just let it flop around. I said, this is not a box. I mean, we had a good laugh. I also got paid for it, but they didn't like it. So what we did with my students in Vienna, we talked to Bösendorfer, which is a local company. They only make 300 pianos a year. And then, I don't show everything, would be too much, but a couple ideas. One would be to make the transformer, that was before the movie, but everybody has been in Japan or at least seen what the Japanese toys are. So it's the piano is either a credenza or is a piano. And it's kind of a futuristic object, a bit like Alien. And the prototype we are building right now is really fun. And we didn't know it, but they had one guy, a rock musician, it was not Elton John, but somebody else, who also plays piano. He would like it because it's height adjustable. So sometimes great ideas come from a stupid idea and then they become something else. But at one point, we know, the idea of the students here said, we cannot assume that if the Japanese and Chinese companies copy Austrian pianos, because that's where it was invented, that we should make it crazy. And they took the Japanese idea back. Just for now. Then money is green. That's a bit about ecology. And money actually is not green yet, because with the so-called religious thing of profits, a lot of crimes are committed. And I think the first big crime, aside of London smog, was the Minamata mercury poisoning by Chiso chemicals. The kids were born with a perfect brain, but with a horrible, disjointed, dysfunctional body. So, to be honest, design like marketing, at least today, is still driving about consumption. And we the way we work in the majority of our projects, we still contribute to pollution and global warming. And that is not, has to do with our promotion to be good helpers for more consumption and marketing, but I think it's not something we can be proud of. I think we have to change it. Because we have only one Earth left, the next one is not very visible. I think we still have, well, pretty at the end. So to understand back to the process, a product has a genesis of ideation, strategy, then it's produced, then it's distributed, it's used by people and consumed, and then it's recycled. So currently, you look a little bit backward. We ship, and then we still have a business model where basically everything goes passively into the chain, and then we see what can we do with it. And what we have to do is we have to advance our profession as creative people, no matter it's business, design, engineering, strategists, whatever, that we go to the early stage of the process and project and think about what should be done for a better future. And also we have to change social networking. There are many ways to do it, how we can interact better and collaborate with our customers. And instead of improving sales, we have to promote ecological competence and reduce waste in any way. LA smog, not a nice thing when you land in the morning there. Stinks like hell. Also changing the front end, I think, is something, and I write a book about it, so within a year I would say it's safe to say you can get it. I can get you a couple of copies then. Because if you really look at it, I think we are at a very crucial juncture. We have to change this whole thing. And also when you see what happens in China, we cannot just say China produces it and then we have no problem with it. Sure, we have a problem. It's actually ironic that our government and senators say, yeah, as long as China doesn't go along with Kyoto Protocol, why should we? I mean, they produce 80% of the stuff they produce for us. Anyway, so these are 500 million phones. It's the estimate of cell phones in American households waiting to be thrown away. Most of them are still in the closet, but one day they will go. So it's 500 million cell phones sitting around with poisonous stuff in it, and nobody doesn't even know what to do about it. Then I think also one thing we have to do is beat the monopolies, like the Prius, the hybrids, the biofuels, with solar and wind energy. Internet actually pretty much scared the telcos, and I think the idea of beating the monopoly is a good way to innovate. It's also a good way to start a new business. One example is a zero-emission vehicle. In 1990, California asked the three automakers, back then they were still big, about a zero-emission car by 2000. And instead of spending the money on ideas, and okay, GE did then the electric vehicle, but they bought the technology from the outside and killed it. But instead of spending the money on R&D and thinking, how can we reduce emissions and do something California asked for, they spent the money in lobbying, that it got shut down. Only one company listened. Actually two. One was Honda, one was Toyota. And both started the ecological project. No German company, no French company, no Italian company, no American company, nobody. Just these two companies. And what they did, really, they brought a car out, fuel cell, looks okay. I will be leasable as of next year. I will get one, just for the challenge of it, to demonstrate to my neighbors that there's a way to do it. And now GM and all the other guys have to buy the technology from Toyota or from Honda. So idiotic, it's really idiotic to refuse a request for doing better by killing it. So I mean, think about it. That's one example. The second, with lighting, there's a lot of technology out, and actually this light bulb from GE Savannah is pretty ugly. We have it at home, but it's ugly. But there's new technology out there. And LED technology is used in automobiles, but it's not used at home yet, because so far it's easier to sell the old stuff instead of saving zillions of kilowatt of energy. That's, by the way, Latin. Anybody still had to learn Latin here? In Europe, you get punished for it. It means light shines in darkness. As a software, I mean, there's also naturally a lot of pollution in software. It's only not so visible, but most software programs are polluted to the limit, and they don't pollute the environment, but our brains and our culture. So what we think will come, and people work on it, like natural language, learn where there will be cognitive software where you see something, it tells you what it is. And I think ultimately we should really try, whatever we do in creative ways, reverse the destruction. And finally, we have created kind of a system in Frog where we say, how do we measure things? We call it ELF, which actually in Germany means 11, which is an incomplete number. And there's also science, invented in America, by the way, the Office of Technology Assessment, 1972, but in the meantime, in the Clinton administration, voted obsolete. They said we are good enough, which they weren't. But not Germany, funny enough, with a wish for, desire for standards and perfection, have done it. It's called research about the effects of technology. And that's a mission. And it's really interesting that a lot of technologies are looked at. And for example, if you look at automobiles, the pollution, certain industrial processes, energy winning electricity by coal, are absolutely destructive, horrible processes. And they still go out because nobody has the courage to change it. Or there's economic pressure, we have to keep it, we have to keep the jobs. Naturally, there's a lot of cynicism in them, but I think ultimately this knowledge gets out. And we call it like this. We did a phone which is hand chargeable. And then we just say very simple, if you get a product, you look at it, it tells you what is the ELF grade. Is it okay? Is it better than it has to be, or is it negative? So the Apple iPhone is negative because it's not, it's glued. It's not recyclable as in its pieces. It cannot be disassembled. And it also has some other poisonous things in it which cannot be taken away. So as much fun as it is, ecologically it's a minus. Plastic bottles for water, no matter how beautiful they are, minus. The true hybrid with this next prototype from Honda, even better than the Prius, but Honda didn't have that good marketing. They try it with the thing. So the idea we have is you have a cell phone, whatever, give the product in, and it tells you these are grapes from Chile and this is apple from California. Grape may taste better, but it's loaded with 500 points carbon. And then you better buy the apple from California to stop this thing. Chile should do something else instead of shipping water through the air. Maybe there are different ways to help. And I think it's also a lot of correction. So as you're a bit in the future, the last segment is the house of tomorrow. We also work a lot in terms how can we do this, because very often if you go to Sierra Club or the Greenpeace, the guys have no fun. I mean, it's this really dragging down emotional thing. I think we save the world by having fun. And one piece is that we put together multidisciplined teams who really are experts in one way, but also can work together in other ways. And so it's not a stupid engineering project. It's cool for engineers, but it's not usable, like software. Software is not usable, so it's ecologically stupid. Then other stuff is usable but doesn't work, also stupid. And then otherwise people don't need it, so they try to sell stupid stuff which people don't need, also stupid. So get the stupidity out. Very simple. And I would call it this new ecology of human culture, not only of ecology. Sometimes forgotten, but still allowed. I mean, it has not been outlawed by the Bush Organization yet, but all men are created equally and independent. And what I still like as a foreign, as a foreign immigrant, is the pursuit of happiness. So we did some research for MTV, what American kids look for. They look for happy family and friends. They want to be successful and do well, but also health-wise, and they want to have a safer and cleaner space. I gave that to my students in Vienna, and the first thing they came up was a bulletproof, explosive-proof fashion vest for Hard Rock Cafe in Baghdad, which also will bring the message home how stupid this whole thing is in terms of immoral approach. But we have a student from Iraq and from Iran that both worked on it. And I said, indeed, that's a thing we will need, because it says reality, everybody currently is in danger. So more peaceful application of nanotechnology was bionic wear, which brings me in a posture. I pulled a muscle, my leg, for example, so I could have avoided it, I guess, if I would have stayed with my right posture. And also we do in Frog, sometimes we give people an opportunity to do something crazy. That is a communicator of the future, projecting software as a holographic image. You can go where you want. It also protects your brain. You have the antenna on the back. Also takes thinking commands. The user interface is by thought. And ultimately you can also say future technology, cellulose-based, there are already organic computers around it that work very fast. You design your own computer on a printer, put it as a tattoo on your arm, and then hopefully it works. It takes a while. You have a computer on your arm. And that has been done by a Korean designer who thinks we should not do boxes. We can rediscover our Asian aesthetics with high tech. And you can design it yourself, put it on, in the evening you shower it off. And then, finally, that's one of my idols, ancient emperor and philosopher Mark Aurelius. Be royal in all you do and accept not being popular. Thanks.